Welcome to Carol and Gary's See America Tour. Hello everyone. Today is Monday, April 30th. We drove 340 miles yesterday from Fort Worth to Lubbock, Texas. Lubbock is a much smaller city than we have been in during the last 4 weeks. It's a welcome break from all the crowded highways and noise. Here's a recap of the population of the towns we've been in. San Antonio had 1.5 million people. Houston had 2.3 million people. Dallas had 1.3 million people, and Fort Worth had 854,000 people. Lubbock only has a population of 252,000. Today we toured the 19-acre National Ranching Heritage Center in Lubbock. Here is an aerial picture of the property where we walked. I don't know that this place had much to do with ranching history as it did about life in western Texas, but it was extremely interesting to see. All structures have been restored and decorated with time-appropriate items. Here is another dog trot log cabin similar to the one we saw in Fort Worth, where the bedroom portion of the house was separated from the kitchen portion of the house by a covered breezeway. This was a one-room ranch bunkhouse built from available stone in 1879. As the railroads moved west, milled lumber became available. Settlers were able to build their houses from this lumber rather than cutting down trees. This house, built in 1903, was called a box and strip house. This is another home built out of milled lumber in 1900. Here is a picture of that house when it was found abandoned. This is a schoolhouse built in approximately 1890. Here is a fenced family cemetery near one of the houses. Family cemeteries were very common in the Old West. These tombstones were replaced on the real graves and the stones donated. This is the historic Santa Fe Railroad Depot built in Roper, Texas in 1918. This is the inside of the Roper Depot after being restored. Here's an old steam engine parked outside of the Roper Depot with a line of boxcars probably waiting for cattle to be loaded. Good morning, everyone. Today is Tuesday, May 1st. Carol and I just returned from a very informative visit to the American Wind Power Museum. This museum has approximately 160 windmills on display, including the Vesta V47 wind turbine, which is that large structure that we're seeing popping up across the country. Most of the windmills were on display indoors. The facility was set up so that the base or legs of most windmills were mounted down in a deep 8-foot or so pit so that the workings of the windmill were visible at eye level. Wind has played an important role in the modernization of many dry, remote areas of the country. In the hot, dry West Texas climate, water has always been a major factor in whether a ranch failed or survived. In addition, the railroad's early steam engines needed water as they moved west. Small versions of windmills were used for other reasons. The Wind Charger Corporation of Sioux City, Iowa, was building small wind generators between 1930 and 1950. For areas that did not have electricity yet, this generator could produce enough electricity to power a radio. By adding right-angle gear mechanisms, wind could be used to turn pulleys, which would then operate saw blades and grinders and other equipment. Early windmills were built with open gears, requiring someone to climb the windmill periodically to grease it. In addition, the blades of early windmills were made of wooden slats, which often broke in high winds or deteriorated over time. As technology improved, the blades were made of metal and the gears were covered. The Vesta V47 wind turbine sits on a 54-foot tall tower and produces 660,000 watts of power annually. That is twice the power that the Windmill Museum needs, so the museum is wired into the Lubbock power grid and sells the excess power back to the local power company. As we were driving from Fort Worth to Lubbock on Sunday, when we turned north on State Highway 84, we saw hundreds of these Vespa turbines along the way, along both sides of the road, for miles. The Windmill Museum told us that these turbines cost $1 million each. On Wednesday, May 2nd, Carol and I visited the Buddy Holly Center. Unfortunately, no photos or videos were allowed in the center. Charles Hardin Holly was born September 7th, 1936 in Lubbock, Texas. His mom thought the name was too big for a little boy, so she called him Buddy. Buddy developed an interest in music at an early age that ranged from country and gospel to bluegrass and rhythm and blues. He created a rockabilly sound by integrating all of these genres in the songs as he wrote. Buddy started his musical career by playing at car dealership openings and local clubs in Lubbock. He was eventually offered a contract with Decca Records in 1956, but in that contract, Buddy was used as his first name, and his last name was misspelled Holly, Holly, instead of Holley, like it was supposed to be. Buddy signed this misspelled contract and made that his professional name. Buddy formed a group called the Crickets with friend Jerry Allison and Norman Petty. As the band's popularity gained momentum, they toured the United States and then traveled to Australia and the United Kingdom in 1958. Buddy Holly and the Crickets influenced some of the greatest British bands and artists including the Beatles, Rolling Stone, and Elton John. In 1958, Buddy agreed to play in the Winter Dance Party tour across the Midwest, but he had moved to New York and his band was back in Lubbock, so Buddy assembled Waylon Jennings, Tommy Alsop, and Carl Bunch to be in his band. This tour was set to begin in January 1959. Other performers on tour included Ritchie Valens, J.P. Richardson, who was going by the name the Big Bopper, and Dion and the Belmonts. It was a cold and miserable tour that time of the year. After their tour bus broke down February 1st, 1959, in Clear Lake, Iowa, Buddy chartered a plane for himself and his band to fly to their next stop. Waylon Jennings gave his seat to J.P. Richardson, who was sick with the flu, and Tommy Alsop gave his seat to Ritchie Valens, who had won a coin toss between the two. Early on February 3rd, 1959, the three musicians boarded the plane, not realizing that it would be the last time they ever see their friends and family. Shortly after takeoff, the plane crashed near Clear Lake, Iowa, killing the pilot and all three musicians. Hello everyone, today is Thursday, May 3rd. The week has been flying by. And speaking of flying, today Carol and I visited the Silent Wings Museum in Lubbock. I didn't realize that the program ever existed. During World War II, the U.S. Army had a program that used C-47 aircraft to tow manned gliders into combat. And these were not small one-man gliders. In addition to a pilot and co-pilot, these gliders were capable of hauling 13 airborne troops with full equipment. These gliders were designated CG-4As. They were 48 feet 4 inches long, weighed 7,500 pounds, and had a wingspan of 83 feet 8 inches. The main structure of the glider was a tubular metal frame with a wooden support structure. The wings were constructed entirely of wood and fabric. The nose section of the CG-4A hinged upwards to accommodate loading and unloading. This allowed a Jeep, a 75mm howitzer, a 35mm anti-tank gun, or a small military bulldozer to be carried into combat. A quarter-ton trailer was often loaded with munitions, fuel, or medical supplies. After landing the glider, the pilot reported to the nearest airborne division headquarters. Division commanders were instructed to release the glider pilots to return to their base at the earliest opportunity to make them available for future missions. Initially, potential glider pilots received 3 phases of training at various bases across the United States, but later all phases of glider training were moved to Lubbock, Texas. 4,800 pilots earned their wings in Lubbock. Carol and I relaxed on Friday and did not take a tour, so this wraps up our week in Lubbock. We have a short drive to Amarillo tomorrow, our next stop. Hope you enjoyed this video. If you haven't done so already, please subscribe to be notified of future videos. Thanks for watching.